Ja, god morgen og velkommen alle sammen til dette arrangementet om journalistikk i regi av Stiftelsen Fritt Ord i samarbeid med Universitetet i Bergen og Reuters Institute for the Study of Journalism ved Oxford University. And a special welcome to Dr. Craig Robertson from Oxford, who is generously present here for this event. Journalistikk et av de viktigste områdene for 50-årsjubilanten Fritt Ord, og har vært det faktisk helt siden starten. Den aller første bevilgningen som Fritt Ord ga noen gang for 50 år siden var til det da nyetablerte Institutt for journalistikk i Fredrikstad, som fortsatt lever, om enn ikke i Fredrikstad. Og dette og mer til kan dere forresten lese om i den nye boka om Fritt Ord, som historieprofessor Hildegunn Slottemo har skrevet. Det ligger et eksemplar til dere alle i stua utenfor her, hvis dere vil ta den med. Det historien, enda viktigere de siste årene, gjennom flere store journalistikkprogrammer, med bevilgninger på noen 100 millioner kroner over et lite 10 år. Noe av det viktigste vi gjør på dette feltet gjennom året, det denne utmerket stipendiaten som vi sender til Oxford for et halvt års studier. En journalist eller redaktør med en del erfaring fra norsk presse, som i Oxford da får god tid til å fordype seg i forskningsfronten med et egenvalgt prosjekt. Søknadsfristen til det store stipendet rett over sommeren. Men med Reuters Institute så samarbeider vi også om den årlige Reuters Digital News Report, som verdens største undersøkelse av nyhetsbruk. Vi med å delfinansiere rapporten og finansierer også den norske rapporten som Universitetet i Bergen ansvarlig for, som Reuters partner her i Norge. Så her og nå skal vi presentere årets rapport, både den internasjonale og den norske. Den norske rapporten dreier seg jo ikke minst om kunstig intelligens og tilliten til journalistikken, og det temaene i dag. Craig Robertsons innledning og Q&A etterpå blir på engelsk, resten av arrangementet på norsk. Så takk til alle som kommer her for å snakke, og ordet vil være fritt i salen også. Og spesielt takk til professor Roy Krøvel, professor i journalistikk ved Oslo Met, som på kort varsel sa ja til å ta dette oppdraget da vi fikk et sykdomsforfall. Så vær så god, Roy.
Tusen takk for det hyggelige ord og for invitasjonen til å lede den diskusjonen her. Vi skal ha 2 presentasjoner. Det blir mulig å stille noen spørsmål etterpå. Vi har et ganske tett program. Men også dere som følger på Facebook kan sende inn eventuelle spørsmål, så skal vi prøve å få formidlet det til panelet. Først ut i dag, Dr. Craig Robertson is a postdoctoral fellow at the Reuters Institute for the Study of Journalism. Before Oxford, Craig studied at Michigan State University, exploring questions related to digital news and online platforms. He is originally from New Zealand and has a background in journalism, law, and political science. So we look very much forward to hearing your presentation. Dr. Craig, welcome.
I'll go this way. Ooh, right. This is the English part. And I thought I'd wear this today to represent the country. I'll just be going over for the next 15 to 20 minutes the main findings of this year's Digital News Report. It's always an exciting time of year for us, especially when I've been working on this for an entire year. It's good to have it out in the public. Is that working? Ooh, no, this way. Okay, that way. So, as mentioned, I'm Craig, and this is the main findings of the Digital News Report this year. Just a bit of context for the report. We cover 47 different markets across the world, 95,000 plus survey respondents across 6 continents. The exciting part for this year is finally we've added another country, so it was 46. Now we've added Morocco, it is 47, so that's our first Arabic-speaking country that we've added to the report this year, so it's good to have them on board. And a bit of context for the report. This is the sort of methodology and funding part. We do an online survey every year in January, February. So an online survey can sometimes underrepresent offline news behaviors like newspaper consumption, radio and television consumption, just for context. And in most countries that we cover, because it's an online survey, internet penetration is relatively good, so it's quite representative of the general public, but slightly less representative in markets like Kenya, Nigeria, and India. So just to take that into consideration when we cover findings, they're not as representative in some of these markets. And also, our work is supported by various funders, including our main funder, the Google News Initiative. We have YouTube on board this year, BBC News, various media regulators and universities, and also our partners here in Norway help us do the report. So now into the interesting parts of the findings. The main thing that we've been tracking for several years now and is continuing this year is what we've been calling the large platform reset. Essentially, changes in the social media environment when it comes to news consumption across the world. So we've been tracking this for 10 years now, 10 plus years now, in a set of 12 markets, where people are getting their news when it comes to social media. And the main thing that we've been seeing over the past decade is the gradual decline in the use of Facebook for news. Facebook itself has been deprioritizing news, changing its algorithm, moving out of the news space, so it's not potentially surprising, but you can also see this in the news consumption data. We have now, across our 12 markets that we've been tracking over this time, 26% of people using Facebook for news weekly. And then you can see how this compares to other platforms where you're only seeing some rises in basically more visual, video-based networks. So YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. We've also added a few other social media platforms which barely register in our survey. Threads and Mastodon have not caught on despite all the public discussion of the decline of Twitter. Twitter is not really in decline in our survey yet, but we'll see as we continue year on year what happens to Twitter/X, whatever we're supposed to call it now. Just a bit more on social media changes. We're seeing, so in general, back there where we're tracking 12 countries in the aggregate, and you could see the decline in Facebook, but there are some markets where the decline is even more precipitous. So you can see Facebook here, the declines in some global south countries like the Philippines and Colombia, double-digit declines in the use of Facebook for news, and also in some markets a decline of Twitter for news as well. So in some markets it's catching on a bit more. And then also in a number of global south countries, especially the rise of TikTok. So it's not just an American phenomenon or even a European one, it's mostly the global south that we're seeing the rise of TikTok and the decline of some of these other platforms for news. So in that context, when we're talking about TikTok, we're seeing the growing importance of video platforms for news, and this is especially the case with younger respondents who've grown up online and especially grown up on social media and are flocking to TikTok. We see quite a lot of people across all our markets. We cover, 2/3 of people saying they consume short-form news videos weekly. Also, half of them consuming either long-form or live news streams as well. So video news consumption quite prevalent online. But it's highest, as I mentioned, in some of these global south markets and the US, plus also under 35s. So this is a big thing, not necessarily within Europe or the United States, but a lot of global south countries where video is very prevalent when it comes to news consumption. As I mentioned, you can see here the differences between markets when it comes to TikTok for news. The biggest markets it's used in are all global south countries. You got Thailand, Kenya, Nigeria, even Morocco that we just added this year. So across all markets, we have 26% of people using TikTok for any purpose, just 13% for news, but obviously much higher in a lot of these other markets. And then you look at the UK and US, where UK only 4% of people saying they use TikTok for news on a weekly basis. So essentially, compared to other networks, non-existent in markets like the UK. As I mentioned, YouTube has also been a consistent player when it comes to news video. And again, it's the same story where it's a lot of the global south where the consumption is being done on YouTube when it comes to news, and a lot less, as I said, when it comes to European markets, but a little bit higher, at least, in the UK and Finland, where we have at least 15% of people consuming news on YouTube. When it comes to the main platforms that people are getting their news on, when it comes to video news platforms, the main one across most markets tends to be YouTube. So you see here in India, South Africa, the US, YouTube being the main individual platform. But the interesting comparison here is the division between consuming news video on any kind of platform like Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, versus on news websites themselves. So you see this in almost all markets. It's the networks themselves dwarfing the use of the news websites themselves for news video, except for actually Norway, where it's comparable, and it's probably something to do with NRK. But you can see there it's equal consumption between platforms for news video and news websites for news video. But that's definitely not the norm. The norm is platforms in most other markets. Continuing this discussion of news video, when it comes to who is consuming the most news video and on what platforms, it might be no surprise to see that it's mostly being driven by younger respondents. So especially the 18 to 24 demographic, much more likely to be consuming news video on any platform than the oldest demographic. Whereas you can see on the far other side of the charts, older people are more likely to be consuming news on news websites and apps, or their news videos on news websites and apps. But as you can see, even so, when you compare all our markets combined, platforms are obviously much more popular when it comes to consuming news video. Another theme that we've been covering for several years now, and it's become much more of an interest in the past year or so because of AI and the elections that are happening this year, is worries about misinformation and unreliable content when it comes to the internet. So with big election years, you know, India, South Africa, the United States, many other countries also having elections, worries about misinformation online have increased again. So you have 59%, that's up 3 percentage points, are concerned about what is real and fake on the internet when it comes to news. And you can see how much higher that is in markets like the United States and South Africa, where there have been large increases in this concern. So this is the election year combining with worries about misinformation plus worries about AI, sort of coming together and increasing concerns about what is real and fake on the internet. And examples of this when it comes to generative AI are you know, realistic, on the face of it, realistic pictures, you know, coming out of the Gaza conflict, and people are worried about how indistinguishable some of these images can seem from reality. So as well as doing our surveys on digital news across the world, we also added a qualitative piece where we researched audiences in the US, UK, and Mexico this year, asking them specifically about AI in the news and their feelings about it. So this is one person in the UK saying they've seen many examples that can be very good, and you know, in the future these things might become even more indistinguishable from what is real and what is not real. So when it comes to platforms and people's confidence in identifying what is real, what is not, what is trustworthy, what is not, we can see that when you look at the red bars here, this is the proportion of people across all markets who say they find it difficult to distinguish between what is trustworthy versus untrustworthy online on these platforms. So this is users of each platform. And you can see that TikTok and Twitter are the main ones where people are worried about what is true, what is not real, what is trustworthy versus what is not trustworthy on each of these platforms. Interestingly, there's a lot of people who are confident in themselves. People tend to have this sort of self-confidence and worry about other people more than themselves. But it is of note that, you know, there's at least a quarter who admit to finding it difficult, at least on TikTok and Twitter, distinguishing what is trustworthy, what is not. And this comes into AI in the news. So this is part of the theme of distinguishing what is real, what is not real. AI has a big role to play in what we're seeing in terms of trends and themes this year. So we asked a few questions this year around people's comfort with AI and the news media. So we asked several questions, one of them being, how comfortable are you with the idea of news being produced mainly by AI with some human oversight? So this is AI taking the lead with humans being in the loop. And you can see in the US and at the aggregate across Europe, most people are uncomfortable with this idea. They don't want their their news being driven by AI mainly. There's a bit more comfort in the US, and this might just be because the US is where a lot of these companies are based. There's a bit more optimism about these technologies in the US perhaps, and a bit more skepticism across Europe when it comes to news being produced mainly by AI. We can also compare this to the other scenario, which is more likely when it comes to news industry using AI, which is news being produced mainly by humans, but with some help from AI, which is what most newsrooms are thinking about when it comes to implementing AI in their news work. They're not giving over more control than they need to AI. And you can see that there's a bit less discomfort if you look at the red, pink, I don't know what color that is. There's a bit less discomfort and a bit more comfort here because humans are in the driving seat rather than AI. So these are the scenarios we gave people, and you can see the stark differences when it comes to comfort. When our qualitative work, when we talked to people around AI and news, we gave them various scenarios to think about and in terms of their comfort, just to get more nuances when it comes to how AI might be used in the news process. So you've got behind the scenes uses, using AI to translate, to transcribe, to help journalists do their job in the background. People are generally comfortable with that because they can sort of understand how it's useful and it's not really impacting what the news looks like. It's sort of just helping journalists do their job. People are comfortable with that. There's a bit of ambivalence in the middle when it comes to using AI to deliver news in new ways. So this might be reformatting content, summarizing the content via AI, that kind of thing. There's a bit of ambivalence, but some comfort there when it comes to this kind of use. But when it comes to generating news content, generating text, images, video, people are completely uncomfortable and they do not like this idea. Is generally what we found. So indications from the news audience that news organizations need to be extremely cautious when it comes to this side of AI, when it comes to generative stuff. Behind the scenes, generally okay. But when it comes to these other uses, and if they are being done, audiences do want disclosure of these things and clear disclosure of what's going on. Perhaps not surprising. We also asked people's comfort with AI being used in various news topics or news subjects. And the general picture we find, which is perhaps not surprising, is that people are much more uncomfortable when it comes to AI being used in very important and serious news topics like politics and crime. They are uncomfortable with AI being used in these areas. This person in the UK saying chatbots shouldn't really be used for important subjects like war and politics. And then there's a bit more comfort with AI being used in news topics that are less serious, less life or death, softer news subjects, as we might say, so celebrity content, sports content, and especially content which can be in many ways theoretically automated. So sports results, for example, there's, the scores, who won, who lost. It's very formulaic, so people can be more comfortable with that kind of use because it can be plugged into an AI and be reported without, someone's life being on the line, like in politics or crime. When it comes to trust in the news, there's not much of a story this year because things have remained relatively stable across most markets when it comes to trust. So across all the markets we cover, 40% say they trust most news most of the time. not much of a shift. And then when it comes to individual countries, again, the year-on-year picture between this year and last year is not much change, but when you look at the picture over many years, you can see how it's been playing out across various markets. So you can see the large dips in trust over time in the UK and Germany. This has probably got a lot to do with political polarization, increasing polarization in these markets. The US has remained stable, but it was so low it had really nowhere to go. For context, I think that in this year, the countries with the lowest trust are Greece and Hungary at 23%, I think, have the lowest trust, and Finland has always got the highest trust. No one can ever beat Finland for trust. But you can see, the story's not the same everywhere. The Netherlands has managed to maintain a sort of level trust at around 50% of people trusting the news most of the time. So it's a different picture depending on where you look, but a lot of markets you're seeing these declines over time. This year we asked people sort of, when it comes to trust, what's important for you when deciding what news brands to trust, what news outlets to trust? Generally, people tend to find a lot of things important because, a lot of things are important when it comes to people trusting the news media. But the main things people said they looked for was transparency, high journalistic standards, fair representation of people, and surprisingly, it was lower than I thought it was going to be, but having a lack of bias was important to people when it came to deciding which news outlets to trust. Less important are things like having a long history, a track record of doing a good job and not being so negative. When it comes to transparency, we're seeing some of this pick up in the industry and how they're doing things. So this is BBC has started a thing called BBC Verify, where they basically just explain how they did things, how they came to conclusions, how they verified a fact, how they verified a video, just to explain to people how the news process works as part of their sort of transparency initiative. So this is something that's being done by the BBC and elsewhere. Because as we found, transparency is a major thing that people say is important for them. Another thing which is very relevant to Norway is paying for news. Norway always remains the top when it comes to people paying for news online. You have 40% of people saying they pay for news online in the past year. Almost a third for Sweden and then the US, and then a long decline until you get to the UK at the bottom there. But the main story here is that this figure hasn't really changed across countries over the last 3 years. So only 17% across all these markets saying they pay for news online. Not much has changed in Norway either. So the question is, has there been a bit of stagnation when it comes to the paying for news online and news subscriptions, getting people to sign up? As you can see, there's been a flat line for the past 3 years when it comes to the overall proportion across these 20 markets who say they pay for news. And one thing we wanted to explore this year, because we did a report a year or two ago around people paying for news, and we noticed that a lot of people were saying they weren't paying the full price for their news subscription. They were paying like $1 or $2, £1 or £2. So we asked this year basically, how much do you pay for your online news subscription and what brands do you pay for? And then we looked at the proportion in each country who said they were paying the full price. And you have, almost half of people in the US saying they don't pay full price for their news subscription. In Norway, it's 38%. In Poland, it's most people. So we found this quite interesting when it comes to the news subscription industry. A lot of news brands offering very cheap deals to get people to sign up, but whether those people stay on and continue to pay the full price afterwards is a different question entirely. And we're finding in our qualitative work and in our quantitative work here that there seems to be a lot of underlying churn in the industry. People will sign up for a cheap deal, they'll use it, then they'll cancel it because they don't want to pay the full price. It's what we have been finding in the past few years. So this is a struggle for the news industry, is getting people to sign up and stay on and then pay full price. We've also been tracking for recent years The difficulty with engaging people with news. So this is all part of the same sort of theme around people disengaging from the news, losing interest. We've been finding over the past few years a large declines in people just saying they're interested in news in general. So large declines in the UK, France, Germany, US, when it comes to people just saying they're interested in news at all. There are some countries, including Norway, where interest levels are more stable, but this is not always guaranteed. You can see Germany, up until a few years ago, was quite stable, and then news interest dropped off. And there's a dip there in Denmark. So this overall theme that we're seeing across a lot of markets may pick up in some of these other markets for various reasons, but this is sort of the overall story that we're seeing. And across most markets, declines in interest in news, but some stability in others. And part of the reason for this, we think, is the nature of news is quite depressing, overwhelming sometimes, which is adding to news avoidance as well. So declining interest and people wanting to avoid the news, especially in the last year with the conflicts going on in the world. So we have, across all our markets, 39% of people saying they sometimes or often avoid the news for various reasons. That's up 3 percentage points, and it's up 10 percentage points since 2017. And the reasons for this we tend to find always the same. The news is depressing, it's overwhelming, it makes them angry, sad, etc. So that's why people are turning away in many ways. And that's got, sometimes it's difficult for the news industry because it's sometimes out of their hands. You've got to cover these important stories, but it does also sort of overwhelm people in many ways. One thing we want to look at, just wrapping up, or getting close to wrapping up, was how do we solve these issues around declining engagement and interest? And one thing we looked at this year, because a lot of news brands have been looking at this, was analyzing what user needs there are and how to fill these gaps. So one thing the BBC has been using is sort of a model which covers, what are these various things that we could do for people, what are their needs, and how can we fulfill those needs? There are other models that add a couple more to this. So, there's the core of keeping people engaged, updating them, educating them about topics, but also, helping them in their day-to-day life and connecting them with the wider society. So there's various things we explored in our survey. What are these needs and what do people sort of feel like they want? When it comes to the perceived importance of these for people across all our markets, the main ones, the core function of the news media is update me. So this is the main one that people think is important, obviously. And a similar related one is also educating me. So educate me about what's going on in the world. But then also of importance is, giving people perspective on different topical issues. So these are the main ones that people find important. We also asked people how good of a job the news media did at these various things, and we compared to sort of see, when it comes to what's important and what they think the news media does a good job or a poor job at, what are the sort of core needs that the news media could fill? Where are the gaps in terms of what people find is important? Younger people find those a bit more important. But these are the biggest gaps that we found when it comes to what people wanted the news media to be doing. So there was a big gap around giving people perspective, so giving people different points of view on various subjects, and also related to what I was talking about when it comes to news avoidance and declining interest, giving people a sense of hope or optimism around the world. So helping people feel better about the world. There's a lot of terrible things going on, and people feel a bit helpless sometimes. So there's a desire for the news media to give people a better sense of hope and or optimism. So those are the biggest gaps that we found. In terms of summarizing the key findings from this year's report, and I think I'm on time. Generally, we're finding a big online platform reset. So some platforms like Facebook and Twitter/X are withdrawing from the news. They're deprioritizing it. And people are increasingly consuming news via video platforms. The problem there being, what is the referral, via TikTok? How do you monetize this? It's expensive to make video. So what is the prospect there when the platform mix is changing? As I said, video platforms are on the rise, both short and long form video, especially in the global south. And again, the question is there, if you want to invest in video, it costs a lot, and it's difficult, and it might be a difficult slog to get people to actually come to your website and contribute money to you at the end of the day. The other theme is AI in the news. There's a general skepticism around AI in the news. There's a wariness that people have. There's a strong sense that people want humans to stay in the loop always, to never give complete control to AI, and to not meddle around with AI and important subjects like politics and crime. And there are worries in the general sense when it comes to AI misinformation around content on platforms like TikTok and X. The other theme is the subscription growth, especially in our data. It's survey data, it's not perfect, but what we're seeing is a stalling in subscriptions, and that the majority of people are not paying full price for their subscriptions when they are paying, which is an interesting finding that we had from this year. And then finally, when it comes to what people need or what people want, so the media is perceived as doing a good job in updating people on the latest news. That's the core function of the news media, but there are gaps around providing people different perspectives and a sense of optimism when it comes to the news. And those are the main findings. Thanks for listening to my ramblings.